Reena. So nice to have you here. Can you tell me any specific moment that makes you decide to be a composer?
I mean, I think there were so many small moments. You know, it's interesting because when I grew up, my parents didn't really realize that being a composer was a thing, like a profession that you could have. So I think I was always just putting things together and always trying to compose counterpoint lines to other things that I heard and writing things down. And my parents kind of thought it was a nice thing that I did. And it wasn't really until I was in high school that I went to an arts high school and my teachers were like, oh, no, this is a real thing. You could actually do this professionally. And, you know, it took me a while to even understand that I could do that. But I will say that one thing that really made me think about being a musician, because I wanted to be kind of a pianist before I became a composer. And this one moment, I was actually listening to Samuel Barber's Knoxville Summer of 1915. And it was that piece where, you know, it's like under the stars in this Knoxville summer. And I was sitting out in this outdoor theater in Los Angeles and hearing this thing, you know, and it's told from the point of view of a young person. And I was like, oh, I see myself in this. I see how this young person is so kind of omniscient about the world. And that was definitely a moment where I was like, I think this is for me. So
in the Western symphonic world, everything is about harmony. So what is harmonies in your imagination?
You know, in Indian music, you know, I guess in Western music, like you can have notes that kind of stand alone as notes, though they do imply like, oh, this is a triad, so it's implying this chord or something like that, even if you're playing a solo piece. But in Indian music, I think of every note is always played in relationship to a drone. So every note is its own two-note harmony in a certain way. But then there's not the same, I guess, the way that certain chords pull towards one another. In Indian music, certain notes pull towards one another in that way, but it's not necessarily like a chordal structure. However, so what I try to do with my music is just that I try to find harmonies that go away from that that basic triadic thing. So I'll avoid things that feel kind of 5/1, cadential, stuff like that. And then I try to like work maybe clusters of chords or certain notes within a raga that kind of feel like they cadence to something else, but they're odd types of cadences. So, I mean, it's been a big question in my music, what the role of harmony is, but right now I can say that what it's not is Western harmony. What it is the kind of tension and release, but without that, you know, Roman numerally style.
Like, how do you envision your music, or how you use music to communicate with the world or express your beliefs?
You know, it changes kind of with every piece I write, but I always start with the furthest questions, which is, you know, who am I writing for? You know, when we say like we want to have a voice, okay, I mean, I could have a voice by going out and yelling on my lawn, but if no one's listening to me, like, what is the point, right? And so I think you know, composers, we can get so into our heads about, okay, this is the way this is constructed, you know, because we spend so much time just by ourselves that we can just get blinders on. And so the first questions I ask are about, you know, what is the relationship between the people I'm asking to make music together? You know, is it a situation where they know each other well and maybe they want some kind of challenge with each other? Maybe it's two communities that really don't know anything about one another, and maybe I start thinking about, where do I place them on the stage? You know, who's there first? Does someone come on later? Or does it, you know, what does the rehearsal process look like? What is that first time that someone's meeting the person that they're playing with? You know, and so when I think about, you know, pieces that I'm writing, I always work back from that human element first. And now, you know, after almost a decade of thinking about these questions, I've gotten pretty good at kind of gauging how people will respond to things. You know, like for instance, I do some stuff with audience participation and I'll ask people to sing or whatever. And, you know, it's much easier in community settings where, you know, you're just somewhere where, you know, it's not dead silent and people are, you know, open to being part of something and there's no fourth wall. But if you ask an audience to sing in an actual audience where there's spotlights and it's dark, you have to make a completely different piece to allow for that to happen. But the point is that, like, you ask that question first and then you work back into notes, rhythms, you know, harmonies, all that kind of stuff.
So, like, I'm very interested in how you portray the light and darkness in the music.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, again, to kind of go back, it has that that kind of major and minor quality in Western music. So whereas in Indian music, I'm not sure because I haven't grown up only as an Indian musician, but there was a time before I knew Indian music where I only knew Western music. And I know that, having that major and minor polarity is really important to Westerners. And so for me, that darkness and light definitely has to do with the shift of the third.
Oh, I see. Okay. There's always some kind of breathing within the music. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, breath is a really big thing, partially because, I've had a yoga practice for many years. And in all honesty, I've struggled with that yoga and meditation practice for as long as I've had it, right? Because for me, I have the practice not because I'm an expert at it, but because I need it, And so I feel like a lot of times I'm just writing the music that I most need to hear. So, I have this piece that gets performed a lot called Take What You Need. And it's like, I'm not writing it because I want someone else to take what they need. It's because I need to take what I need. So that's why I'm writing the piece, right? And so I think very much these interactions that happen that kind of feel very organic and, flowy and, how should I say this? Just, natural. For me, I write it because that's what I want to experience. And I want to experience that sense of ease and that sense of intuitive flow. And I think in my life, I can get so bogged down into things, and it's like I'm actually such a math nerd on the other side, and I love data and I love answers and I love things to make sense. And so in a way, my musical practice really challenges me to take a step back and actually think about, who am I as a human, not just who am I, like these parts of my head that need to make sense of things, And I think, there are so many things in our world that aren't going to make sense to our human brains because there's just so much that we don't understand. And so I think in my music, I kind of aim to go into those places.
So does it ever bother you, like, hearing a version of your work and you're like, ew, I don't like it?
It's interesting because every version gives me some answers, And so it's interesting. It's like, okay, sometimes I'll have professionals play my pieces. Say, for example, people who are just very good readers and maybe they don't need to rehearse and they just kind of read something through. That gives me some idea of, okay, what does this look like at first glance, Or what does it feel like when people are just taking the very bare bones of it? Then on the other hand, you have maybe someone from high school who is working super, super hard to get something together, and they might not have the dexterity of a professional player, but it teaches you something different about when you invest, So in a way, I just think of my music as just a mirror that's kind of held up to whoever is playing it.
That's so awesome.
The only thing that I would say is, don't be afraid to kind of really trip over one another, because I think like the tendency in all musicians, especially if you haven't played the piece a lot together already, is to really give people you give your partner their space, and you have to get in there. And if you do, just trust that the music will kind of work itself out. And I think it requires so much more trust than when there are bar lines and when there's counting. But I mean, it's like you are a player who just naturally, I think, does have a lot of trust for the process. And I would say just lean into that as much as you can.
Like, I have to ask you this question, you probably answer 1,000 times. Like, how did that title come about? Because like it does feel side by side, like I'm side by side with the oboe.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because you're probably asking for a variety of reasons. One is that most of my titles are Hindi words, so it feels just like an odd title, right? I mean, it's like most of my pieces have titles that are similar to each other, and here's this randomly weird title. And the reason why is actually the title was part of the commission. So it was for River Oaks Chamber Orchestra, and their two kind of artistic and directors, the people who are at the top of the organization, are an oboist and a violist. And so they commissioned the piece to kind of commemorate that season, and the season was called Side by Side. So they were like, oh, we would love to have a piece that's called Side by Side. So there are very few pieces that I've had where the title has been stipulated in the commission, but that's, I think, one of two pieces that's like that. And that was a tough one to write for too, because, I mean, these two instruments that are similar in range and that have, that often you don't hear them just in a duet with one another. You'd think one would kind of be higher or lower than the other. It was a real challenge to figure out what to write that would, again, working back from the two people, what is the relationship between these people? How can I both honor their closeness, but then also kind of challenge them to stay kind of locked into each other like that.
Right. So why is silence to you in your music? Or like in general, like how do you see silence?
That's a really good question. I feel like you're just asking all the right questions.
Really?
Silence is so challenging for me because I think, I have this tendency that I've had probably since I was a kid, where when, like, I always think I thought of myself as like, oh, I don't really have anything important to say, or if I'm gonna talk, like, I better be saying the most brilliant possible thing that, anyone has heard. Otherwise, I'm not like worth people's time, And I think like a lot of women definitely have that, or we feel like, oh, are we saying the right thing, whatever. And so for me, silence has always been the most terrifying thing, because when you're asking someone to engage with you and you're not saying a thing, it is so scary to be like, oh, is this person just going to turn off this recording? Are they going to go somewhere else? Even a beat of complete silence feels like, am I dropping the ball? Should I have something there? Am I being lazy by not putting a note there? So, I mean, I've grappled a lot with silence. And again, I write those silences because they're what I'm trying to do to kind of challenge myself. And so I think, in the spirit of that, sometimes I try to push the silence and let the performer push the silence, as long as it is just at the place where it's starting to get uncomfortable, and that place is different for a lot of people. Sometimes people are just like, okay, I don't want to hear too much silence, I'm going to just start right away. Other people are like, yeah, I'm going to stand on the stage for 5 seconds, it's fine, So again, it shows me so much about performers, and I think there are so many different ways to play silence, if you will, right? And so for me, I learn from performers by writing a thing that's open and letting them show me what's possible.
Great.
The thing that I feel like I've learned in my practice, and I'm continually learning, is this idea of kind of simple elegance, of not making things. I think as I go along, my music gets a little simpler in certain ways, because I don't feel like, oh, I have to make it into the most complex thing just to make people think that I'm smart or something, right? I'm like, I'm okay doing something that's just a little bit more simple. And so I wonder, how this will play out when I'm 65 years old. Maybe I'll just be writing whole notes on the page, who knows?
Well, that would be cool too.
Yeah, great. We'll check in then. I think, to me, Indian music doesn't have dynamics per se, because, in a way, you write dynamics for kind of alignment purposes. Like if you're in an orchestra, because certain people have to play softer, so, it's kind of a way of almost figuring that out. Because Indian music is a solo art, it's kind of up to the performer to figure out what they do. And they're improvising, so dynamics are kind of, just thrown in there as part of the improvisation. And I think I'll only specify dynamics when I think they're counterintuitive to what you would want to do as a Western player. But also, I will say, for my pieces that have been performed quite a bit, because I mean, to me, when I finish writing a piece, it's not really done to me. It needs to be done, performed certainly by one person, but then I like to have it performed by 2 or 3 groups just to get a sense of what people are kind of agreeing and disagreeing on. And then maybe that's the time where I'll put some dynamics into the score when I feel like, oh, everyone kind of thinks this is this. I'll add that then to the score. But to me, that input is so crucial, because also I don't want to overwrite things, because I know that especially Western musicians play with a lot of like really serious intention, because you're trained to blend certain ways with certain people. And I'm keeping it open just to kind of show you that I trust you, I guess.
Do you have instruments that you go to when you compose?
Yeah, so actually, I mean, this piano that you see behind me is the instrument that I've composed pretty much everything except my first 5 pieces on. It's traveled with me everywhere since 2002. I've had this piano, and so certainly, I mean, because I'm a pianist and because that's my main instrument, I'm always kind of I feel things in my hands in a way that you probably do, when you're playing your major instrument, right? That anyone would, and so. There's certainly that, but a lot of the melodies that you'll hear clearly don't come out of piano writing, they come out of vocal writing. And so it's some combination of me just singing and playing the piano is how I come up with most things. But then you'll also see there's a violin up there.
Right.
And I definitely play enough violin to play it. I mean, I was quite serious about it in my mid-20s, so I can get things done. So, I mean, to me, the thing that is scary is actually brass instruments, because even woodwinds, I feel like I have a natural sense of how they work. When I'm writing for brass, I have to really imagine because I do not play a brass instrument at all. And honestly, the way that I do it is I'll usually just sing kind of openly without any meter or whatever, and I'll just sing, and then I'll record myself, and then I'll transcribe it as if I'm transcribing someone else doing it. And so that's why a lot of times things look really like insane on the page, but when you play the melodies, they feel pretty, intuitive and natural. And so what I've been trying to do, and it's been hard because I'm, writing so much new music, but as things go along, I do try to make audio guides where I sing those melodies for people. So especially with my pieces that are the most performed, those audio guides exist so that people can kind of get it straight from the singing. And, I even do that in an orchestral setting where, there's certain solos that happen at certain times. And if someone just hears it, it's almost like, for instance, like if I were to try to describe to you what an accent was versus if I just did the accent and you somehow just picked it up, it feels like it's that level of difference where you can get the notes and whatever, but getting that little accent of what it means, it just has to be done by hearing it.
Do you celebrate Diwali yourself?
So what's really interesting is that I'm from a part of my parents are from two parts of India. My dad is a Muslim and he's kind of from northern India and lived in Pakistan. My mother is a Catholic and she's from southern India and lived in Kenya. So strangely, I mean, my cultural upbringing included Muslim holidays and Catholic holidays, but never included Hindu holidays. But obviously most of Indians are Hindus, and especially getting into Indian classical music, I now know so much about Hinduism because obviously most people who I associate with are Hindu, and also my husband is Hindu, so that's another thing. So it's been really interesting because I feel like I celebrated I celebrate it culturally, but I don't necessarily know enough to celebrate it religiously. And I mean, the other thing to note is that in India, everyone celebrates everyone else's holidays. There's no oh, you're this, so you don't celebrate that. No, if it's a day off, everyone is going to get in there, right? And so I think, in America, we're a little bit okay, well, Hanukkah is just for Jewish people, Christmas is just for, and in India, it's not like that at all. Everyone celebrates all holidays.
That is amazing. That's so great. That's what we should do here.
Yeah, totally. The more good things to celebrate, the merrier, right? We need as many things to celebrate as possible.
It's going to help with our economy too.
Why haven't people thought of this?
Oh my goodness.